Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech Mail. My name is Alan. It's time to talk about Star Wars Episode 9. It's kind of hard for me to get excited about the new trilogy. Meow, with Jon Favreau's Mandalorian series coming out in November. Then there's the 7th season of the Clone Wars. We're even going to see Ewan McGregor chilling in the desert as Obi-Wan Kenobi in another series. And of course there's that Office-inspired mockumentary about a maintenance crew on the Death Star, a Cassian Andor series that no one even knew they wanted, Rogue 2, Death of the Bothans, and Rian Johnson's new trilogy about an X-Wing that secretly wanted to be a TIE fighter but couldn't because of the male hierarchy. That personally is going to be the one I'm looking forward to the most. When I'm riding my motorcycle, I like to imagine that it's sentient and that it secretly wishes to be a jet ski. Hey Disney, love Disney, they got a ton of money and that means they're going to give us a ton of content. I feel so full of content right now. I'm still trying to get through the Alphabet Squadron novel, haven't even started the third Thrawn novel, and the Resistance cartoon with So Meow, I haven't really finished that either. But I guess it's better to have something rather than nothing. Have you ever met a Battlestar Galactica fan? As my pops used to say, be grateful for what you have. As he guilted me about the Cultural Revolution and massive famines in China in the 60s and 70s. Cannibalism. It's only wrong when you're consuming another family member. What are we talking about? Oh yeah, so in the trailer for the new Star Wars Episode 9 Rise of Skywalker, there is one very interesting scene. No, it's not Darkseid Rey. JJ, stop trolling us. No, it's not Star Wars Burning Man. And I actually heard it's kind of overrated. By day 3, the spice and death sticks usually run out, and then everyone just starts turning against each other. So is it evil C-3PO? No, but we do have a good theory about why he has red eyes in our next video. So, if it's not all those very interesting scenes, then what scene are we talking about? The giant freaking fleet of Imperial Class Star Destroyers, of course. Now, we know that the new trilogy really loves using spooky Force vision. Usually Rey has them and they're very cryptic and point to Rey being a clone, wink wink, check out our theory now. Actually later, check out our theory later. But this scene clearly looks like something that is happening in real life in a galaxy far, far away. And the reason is Finn is there, and he has about as much Force sensitivity as a roasted pork shoved inside of a deep fried Ewok. That actually sounds amazing. So, if this scene is real, then what the hell is going on? Well, first, for all the people who are screaming that this is a ghost Imperial fleet from the Imperial era, I would like to calmly remind you that this fleet is most likely just in a nebula. As a matter of fact, one of our fans messaged me on Facebook and even asked if this was the Maw installation and if Abeloth was coming back. The Maw was basically a region in the center of the galaxy that was surrounded by gravitational anomalies. It was very hard to get to, and this is where they trapped this ancient monster known as Abeloth. It's legend, so I don't think it's coming back because, unfortunately, movie directors like Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams kind of look down on legends and books, wordsmiths, whatever. They usually won't take anything from legends, and if they do, they'll usually do it in a very sneaky way and modify it so it's very different, like how they turned the Mandalorians into some peace-loving pacifists. Or they'll just make it some minor Easter egg to show us fans that they too are true fans and have been watching Star Wars since they were wee little Johnsons. So there are gas clouds and nebulas in space, and this Imperial fleet doesn't necessarily need to be a ghost fleet. We could just be looking at one of the many Imperial Class Star Destroyers that the First Order has been using since they got their face kicked in during the Battle of Jakku. That's right, the First Order doesn't just have Resurgent Class Star Destroyers, they also have Imperial Class Star Destroyers and a whole lot of them. This makes sense. Remember, when Palpatine did his whole contingency plan, he saved a good portion of the Imperial fleet. Sure, he was really pissed off at the Empire for failing to protect him and wanted to destroy everything with vindictive plans like Operation Cinder, but he also selected his most capable and loyal officers to start a new order that would one day bring the galaxy back under the control of his newly possessed teenage girl Dathmari virgin vessel thing, which of course is not confirmed by Disney or Kathleen Kennedy and co. But guys, if Palpatine is going to come back to life, he's not going to come back as an old wrinkly man. I don't think.
God wills it!
And even if Palpatine preserves just 1% of his entire fleet, that's still 1% of a fleet that was supposed to secure the entire galaxy, which means the First Order probably has thousands of these ships and at least one Steve. And where do they escape to? Well, the terrifying unknown region. It's basically like that region in between Queens and Brooklyn where no one's ever been because there aren't any subway lines there, and also because there are a bunch of massive hordes of alien barbarians roaming around destroying stuff. So when the First Order entered the unknown region, they lost a massive amount of people and ships to barbarians and also head-on collisions with black holes and stars. You see, the unknown region was not very well mapped and had a high concentration of gravitational anomalies. Just like that area in between Brooklyn and Queens. Lack of subway lines, lack of hyperspace lanes. What's the difference? And when Snoke finally saved the First Order with his creepy navigators, what was left is what the First Order used. Now, the biggest problem with the Imperial Class Star Destroyer was that it consumed a massive amount of resources and was generally a logistical nightmare if the proper system wasn't set up. We're talking about a 1-mile long ship that required a crew of around 40,000 officers and enlisted men and women, along with a legion of stormtroopers. By the time the First Order had reached safety, they were more decimated than when James Cox realized that his first big movie was starring Kevin Spacey. So while the First Order did have several Imperial Class Star Destroyers, they didn't necessarily have the resources or people to run them. The Galactic Empire is always known for being very wasteful with human lives. I mean, TIE fighter pilots are essentially the Star Wars version of water bottles. You could just reuse them, but why? So the Imperial Class Star Destroyer would serve in the First Order military for the next 30 years. Pretty much looking the same on the outside, but with most of its weapon systems and maintenance automated by droids and other machines. You see, automation is affecting everyone, even space fascists like you, Steve, sitting there in your gaming chair comfortably wearing your black shirt. You used to make a good living as a turbolaser battery officer, enjoying the simple things in life like melting entire families and villages of Ewok into one closer and more concentrated blob of organic goo with a precisely aimed superheated ball of plasma. So as you can see, it's very likely that we're just looking at the First Order fleet. But if I ended this video here, then this would just be a very clickbaity video, and I really can't do that to you, Steve. I mean, you've waited this long, you've listened to all my nonsense for several minutes, so there is actually a second, more unlikely theory, but I think it's worth exploring. Look at how these Star Destroyers are lined up in this shot. They aren't in tactical formation. A fleet commander would never deploy their ships in this manner because all these ships are blocking each other's firing lanes. None of these ships seem to be operating at all. There are no lights, no turbolasers firing at Finn's ship. I mean, there aren't even any TIE patrols or smaller corvettes or picket ships. Also, the First Order generally deploys large fleets with a variety of different ships, not just a giant fleet of one ship. As a matter of fact, these ships don't look like they're in a fleet at all. They look like they're coming off of an assembly line. Now, what kind of factory could produce that many ships at one time? Not even the orbital shipyards over Quat could produce that many ships. So what can? Well, have you guys ever heard of the story of the Rakatan Infinite Empire and their magical Starforge? Have you ever heard of Darth Revan and his fleet of 1,000 destroyers? You see, before there were empires and rebellions and republics, before even the Sith and the Jedi, there was one gigantic horde of decayed aliens known as the Rakatans. They had been elevated by a very naive and advanced species known as the Qua. The Qua traveled around the galaxy like a race of Angelina Jolies and gifted more backwards alien cultures with all sorts of new technologies and knowledge of the Force. Little did they know, the Rakatans had a natural affinity for the dark side and evil things like cannibalism. The Rakatans quickly used their new technology and force powers to overthrow the Qua. They more or less succeeded in doing so, and soon began taking over the rest of the galaxy. They enslaved all of the major races, including humans, Rhodians, Twi'leks, Vulcans, Wookiees, and scattered them across the galaxy into their factory worlds where they would pump out more ships for their armada. This is why a lot of planets in the core region don't seem to have one native species like in the Outer Rim. And this is because most aliens in the core region could trace their roots back to being Rakatan slaves transplanted from God knows where. Now, one of the biggest achievements that the Rakatans were able to create was a super weapon known as the Starforge. And like New York City, most Rakatan technology ran on dark side negative energy. And this massive Starforge installation was basically an evil 3D printer. So if you place, say, Keanu Reeves in the Starforge, you would probably print out 1 million versions of William Dafoe. The fallen Jedi Revan had actually used the Starforge to create a fleet out of thin air, and he almost took over the entire Republic with it. Unfortunately, the Starforge was destroyed. However, it is possible that there are multiple Starforges out there. The unknown region would be a great place to hide a super weapon, and so would the Maw in the center of the galaxy. The point is, when I first saw that massive line of Star Destroyers in the trailer, I thought two things. First, I hope Holdo didn't survive her kamikaze attack, and two, the mother-freaking Starforge. So a lot of people don't realize that during Episode 7 and during Episode 8, in the background, the First Order had a massive fleet that was taking over the rest of the galaxy. This could be what we're seeing in the trailer, and I kind of hope it is because I want to see more massive naval battles. You had some good battles in Episode 7 and 8, but we really are missing something more spectacular. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. Stay tuned for our next episode. We're going to be looking at C-3PO's red eyes. And, as usual, if you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.